Yeah. First question, who in the audience is building a DePIN right now? Or has ever built a DePIN? Okay, I actually don't see so much. Anybody in the audience who is about token design, economics, these kind of things, tokenomics? Okay. And then who in the audience has no idea about tokenomics and economics, and this is all a black box? All right. Well, so I researched DePINs for quite a while now, like 2 years. And yeah, my focus is very much on the more economical side of things, which obviously ties into the technical parts. And yeah, I just want to share basically the 3 major things and observations that I came across over this time. And it starts with basically, okay, if you're building a DePIN and a physical infrastructure network, what are the different components do you need? What are the different roles? And if it's something that involves storage capacity, compute, or antennas, the very first basic thing that you need is a supply, right? You need supply for your DePIN. And why you start this DePIN in the first place, at least from an economic viewpoint, you think you have some advantage when it comes to scalability, the unit economics, or the usability, right? Because otherwise, I mean, XNet would never have been founded, Helium would never have been founded if they don't knew that, hey, you know what? These telco providers, they spend billions of dollars to put the antennas everywhere. If we can leverage basically households, like, everybody who has a house can just put a node on their rooftop, an antenna of their rooftop, and this has way better unit economics than what these telcos do, and that's why our DY network will be way, way more superior. So that's number one. Any network that you're building, even if it's not a DePIN, you ideally also have users, which ask you for the service that you're providing, and then you send this service. So that makes a demand of your network. So very basic economics, supply, demand. But since it's decentralized, and it's random people all over the globe, or like very not centralized, and you don't have any lawyer that you can send, hey, this guy didn't do the right job, you need some sort of like verifiability, right? This is the crux. This is why any DePIN, you see proof of location, proof of coverage, proof of XYZ, right? Any DePIN always have some proof of whatever, which just means like you can make the users believe that you can trust using my service, because in the back end, I have some sort of mechanisms, typically involving validators, sometimes even delegators who help curate this validator set that will make sure that whatever you requested, storing data, getting coverage, is done in a proper way. So this is your basically verification role that you need. Now, you're providing work, and typically the people pay, and you have these proofs. All of that requires some sort of like ledger where you store all this information and do the bookkeeping, which is your accounting layer, right? This is the Solana, this is your blockchain. This is where everything comes together. This is where you store which work has been done and has been delivered, and also which payments, right? Role number 4, the accounting layer, aka the blockchain. Here you see that a lot of DePINs and a lot of networks kind of like benefit from networks effect, right? Because if you have other networks, for example, that help facilitate payments, fiat to crypto, then me as an XNet or whatever, I can leverage that and don't need to build it myself, right? Very simple network effects. Obviously, the better your accounting layer, your blockchain, the more thriving the community, the developer community, the more better benefit for you to build in this community, right? This goes way beyond, finance, DeFi, and then all that stuff. Last but not least, so for 4 roles, sometimes there's the 5th role, is when you think about XNet and Helium again, it's very tedious if you have a mobile plan and you would need to make the pricing with each and every of these antenna operators. Doesn't make any sense, right? That's why you have XNet foundation in the middle, or some sort of like gateway that kind of like off-ramps the load with the carriers, with AT&T and all these guys. but then also in the back end makes sure that the supply guys, the guys with the antenna, get rewarded properly. All right, so any DePIN, you can analyze them. They will all have these 5 roles. Sometimes don't have the gateway, for example. Sometimes they don't have delegator, but you'll find up to these 5 roles in any DePIN. And also, this brings me to the 3 topics when you think about economics of DePINs. Typically, you need to consider the scalability, the unit economics, right? What's the advantage from the economy side versus the centralized setup? The second big block is verifiability. And the third one is all about, the network effects, how can you leverage these? Let's start with the first one, and this brings you to the, I guess, famous DePIN flywheel, where it's always starting like, okay, you start with decentralized supply, you offer it, people use it, this is your demand, eventually they pay for it. With this money, you can ramp up your supply even more, you can expand your network, right? And this kicks off the flywheel. But to start at the very first point, as you see, typically, initially, how do you make anybody contribute to the network? When you don't even have revenue, when you don't even have users, you give out token rewards, right? This is a classical way to spin off this flywheel. And yeah, how do you do this? Basically, what people do is you make a reward function that says, okay, this is the budget and this is how we spend it. And there's 2 ways. The one is I would call it Bitcoin way, right? The fixed issuance, you just say, okay, each block, this is the amount of token we mint, and it just goes to other contributors. Then you can also say, okay, the KPI-driven issuance is more the Ethereum way or the Solana way, where you say, okay, it's not just time that influences how much we emit, there's also some other dependency, right? Could be network utilization, could be, staking ratio, any other KPI. And then there's networks that kind of like do both of those, right? And as you can see, maybe in this graph, people tend over time more and more to go KPI issuance just because it gives you more flexibility. Next question, now you have like, okay, this is how I do it. I, find my function. How much do I actually incentivize? How much should I spend to give rewards out? And also whom? This brings us back to the 5 roles that I described earlier, right? The supply, verification, the blockchain, right? The accounting layer. You see here in the data that we analyzed, it's mainly supply side. And what you see on the y-axis, this is basically the percentage of total supply that you spend for these guys each month. And you see, for example, IONET, Ether, XNet is way below 0.5%. This is already, the dots shown is their peak, right? And the solid line is kind of like the median across all of them. And you can see it's quite low, because just think about it, if you spend like 0.5% each month, right? Over 1 year, you already spend 6% of your token supply just for the supply side of your network. And this is a complicated chart. There's also the simple TLDR of that. If you aggregate that and kind of like extrapolate this, what most protocols do, most DePINs do, over 4 years, 20% of your total token supply, this is a good rule of thumb, what most DePINs do. And funnily enough, this 20% for supply rewards or supply and verification rewards, if you look at all those DePINs as well, how much do they allocate for the team? It's also 20%. I didn't make up these numbers. This is just like what the data says. But intuitively kind of like makes sense, right? That you say, okay, the guys who do the work serving our users are on a similar range of importance to the people that actually build the whole thing and ramp it up and do all these other things to get the protocol going. Second, let's come back to the flywheel. So we talked about the rewards to kick things off. The second little thing is like, okay, as your network scales, you should also improve the unit economics, right? Because lower cost means like this, more efficiency, which either means you can get more demand by lowering prices, or the network, makes more profit. And actually, these unit economics improved a lot over the last years. And reasons are, obviously, we have now general purpose base layers, right? When you look at 2018, Arweave, Filecoin, they looked around and they're like, okay, I need a blockchain for my ecosystem, for my DePIN to grow on. There was only Ethereum. Ethereum was like not serving what they need, so they built their own. And this is what you see on the right side of this chart. When you need to operate your own blockchain, you need to pay for the security budget. It's costly. That adds up to the rewards that you pay. And it's basically double the amount versus when you just go to Solana or Base or whoever, right? DePINs that just leverage general purpose base layers, they outsource the whole accounting layer security budget and obviously can spend less rewards. And as it's also shown, this is a trend ever since 2022. There's less and less and less DePINs that actually go the route of like, no, I need my own L1 for whatever reason. There's another thing that improves. Again, another complicated chart. What does it do here? Basically, what it can do for any of the DePIN, you can try to understand, okay, how much does it cost to run a node? Right? For example, for Filecoin, you can understand, okay, if I provide so much petabytes of storage, how much will it cost me basically on a yearly basis? It's easier when you think about Helium or XNet, where you just say, okay, these antennas, these hotspots, some cost like $400, some cost like $800, but you can roughly then put it out of like, okay, they last, 2-3 years, and then have an annual value of that. And you hold that against the rewards that you get per year. And then with this ratio, this is what's shown on the y-axis here. It's kind of like the profit margin that you can expect by running a node. And what's interesting is everything that's yellow, this is this digital research networks, like, provide compute or, basically run a server. And anything that's green is physical research networks. You have a sensor, and an antenna or whatsoever. And you have 4 clusters, even though there's 3 circles. But for the yellow, for the DRNs, you have high profit margins when you allow delegated staking. That's why you should think about if you really need delegated staking, because typically you will have higher profitability for your nodes. Could be a good thing, or could be a bad thing. But all the others is a range of like 50 to 150% profit margin that these have, which kind of like makes sense when you think about, okay, server compute is typically more commodity than these nodes. And on the node side, for the green ones, a GeoNet node is quite costly, at least the more expensive one. XNet, WeatherXM, these nodes are more expensive, especially when you compare them to, Demo device or Acrine, which, sometimes cost less than $100. And this is also okay, if the low-cost nodes, typically they also get less profit margin, right? Because also less risk on and you're a larger audience of people that can actually join your network. But what I wanted to say is also like, okay, we are getting better and better and getting these nodes in the hands of more and more people, and that helps with unit economics. Brings me to my second point, verification. Again, remember the 3 topics, right? Scalability, unit economics. Now we talk verification. Not going too much into detail because it's a very technical topic, often discussed. The TLDRs, it's still challenging, it's unsolved. Every protocol tries to do it. It's this trade-off of, okay, I want to do it properly, and then you can look, for example, at Filecoin, right? Every 30 minutes, you need to run a super compute-intensive proof. It's very costly and hence very inefficient. The other side of the spectrum is like, you just don't do it at all, which brings the problem of like, okay, how can I trust that they don't do any stupid thing if I store my data there, or the data that they say they commit is actually true or not. The proxy that most DePINs do is just say, okay, we kind of like try to align contributors with our economics. And what people do is digital research networks make you stake stuff, and they say, whenever you do bad stuff, we'll take away the stake. We might not know exactly how we do it because of verification, but we just like threaten you to do it, and this gives you some skin in the game. And on the node side, physical resource networks, they say like, yeah, you need to purchase this $400 node And obviously, if you tinker with something and we ban you, you have a device that costs $400 and it's not going to earn you anything because, you're basically excluded from the network, right? So this is kind of like currently the way to align people, your contributors, by one of those two mechanisms. I hope, again, we get better on this verification part. But in interest of time, let's also look at the last part, the network effects, where this is truly something where, this is probably the best aspect of it and the one where you can have the most fantasy. When you just look at this is even like a couple of months ago, but every week there's a new partnership, one token protocol with the other, right? Because the tokens just enable this like very flexible of like, okay, we can do this partnership, this agreement. But also if you look Marari, Samsung Next, it's even cross crypto, like outside of crypto cooperation. Another really important thing is if you look back like 4 years or 5 years, Helium went out and said like, hey, yeah, spend $800 and put this hotspot in your home and we'll give you some, printed token. This was not many people on the globe that said like, okay, yeah, sure. But that changed drastically, right? They were the pioneers. And if you look around now, there's millions of guys out there around the globe who say like, yeah, I want to run this node, this road, because I understand the concept, right? Running a node became a thing. And this is part of this whole like network effect of like, yeah, once some DePIN proved out, this works, another one benefits. And this leads me to my last point, basically. If you bring this all together, finally, we see that people pay to use these networks. The chart in the blue, these are revenues, annualized monthly revenues of, I think, like 25 DePINs. The solid blue line is again the median. And as you can see, we started at $100,000 annualized revenue, so quite low. Now we're above $1 million. Still doesn't sound very much, right? But anybody in the audience know what's the ARR of Solana in 2021? It was some 1 million. So you just know it takes time, right? It takes time to grow a business, to ramp up the revenue. But as we all know, especially in crypto, especially with, when you also tackle the other 2 points, right? Rewards, incentives, spinning the flywheel, also taking care of verification, this can grow quite exponentially, quite fast. And this then also results in the right chart, where you see, okay, initially I said, we need to pay the rewards because there's no user revenue coming in to pay the node operators. This is the ratio of like how much rewards you pay, how much revenue you get versus how much rewards you pay out, right? And as you can see, there are already some DePINs out there that have a ratio above 1. That means they earn more revenue that they pay out in rewards. Because essentially at one point in time, right, you want to, of course, have more paying customers. They pay you more than what you actually spit out in rewards to the supply side. And yeah, to sum that up, so I would say, DePIN still in an early stage, but we for sure figured out how to spin off this DePIN flywheel, especially, supply side, how we do the rewards, how to not over-incentivize, how not under-incentivize, and to some extent the unit economics. Not saying we're done there, but at least we see more and more protocols that also tackle that side and think about, okay, how can we make the whole thing more efficient? What we still need to figure out, verification, right? Still challenging the skin in the game mechanics, right? Staking or buy or nodes. This only can get us so far, especially when you also have a centralized gateway, right? That then determines a little bit who gets what. This is still, I would say, putting a little bracket around the decentralized aspects of DePIN, and we should fix that. But there's already a lot of talented teams working on that. What really makes me bullish is like, yeah, and finally we see demand paying customers, not just users who use your service for free, but they actually pay for it. The revenue numbers are going up, and they're also going up fast, right? This is the way to go. And this is also the end of my overview. If you have more questions, you can catch me around here. You can also go to Twitter and follow me. I post most of this stuff, or actually all of that, sooner or later. And yeah, with that, I hope you enjoyed this little economics lesson and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks a lot.